Okay guys, so now we're at the software side of this. We're going to be checking out what to do in Cura. Now, if you haven't seen my 3D printing initial setup video, you might want to go check that out. Now, I did initially set it up for PLA. This one's going to be the setup for the ABS material, and I will probably have a link in the description to my project code link. I know it's for code, but I'm also going to use that kind of as a posting thing, so I'll probably post the settings file, the Cura settings file out there. But if you haven't viewed my first video, you can check out that. It goes over a lot of the basic stuff for Cura that I'm probably not going to cover here. So I'm just going to go through the basics of what is different for doing ABS prints. So here we go. We've got this on our print bed. So I'm right clicking is what I'm doing to move this around. Okay, and then zooming with the scroll wheel to actually look at it. So looks pretty good. Looks like I don't have any overhangs. Even this right here, this little open spot, it's got a pretty good radius on it, so I don't think I'll need support material. I don't know if I covered that. I don't remember, honestly, if I covered that in the last video, but sometimes when you have overhangs, you will need support material, and that's what over here under support, what that is for. Right now I've got the platform adhesion type. It'll basically create a brim around this to help stick this down, because that is one thing about ABS that is a total pain. ABS is a wonderful material because it is strong and flexible, so that way it can take impacts and things like that and not break, whereas PLA is very brittle and it can actually break very easily. But the drawback to ABS is that it warps. It warps very easily. It cools rapidly and it will warp. It will actually pull away from the print bed, which is why you have to have great bed adhesion. Well, one way to improve that is to set your platform adhesion type to brim. And what that will do, if I go over here to the layers mode, it'll actually show you what I'm talking about. See these layers right here? It actually prints kind of a single layer brim that goes around this, so that way when it prints the main piece, it'll actually adhere that to that brim, and that brim will help it stick down. It won't want to warp, because in order for it to warp, it will have to peel this entire brim up to actually warp. So that actually helps your adhesion, as well as there's other tricks. There's you can look for videos on ABS juice or ABS glue or whatever, which I'll probably do a video soon, simple video showing how to make that you can spread on your bed, and that way it'll even improve even more. What it basically does is it puts like a thin layer of ABS on your board, so that way, or your heated bed, so that way when it sticks down, it actually kind of glues itself down. So that works really well too. I recommend both of them, doing the brim and doing an ABS slurry or ABS juice or whatever you want to call it. But basically you dissolve ABS into acetone, and the acetone will evaporate once you spread it on, and it'll leave a thin layer of ABS behind. You can choose, I believe, how many lines. Here we go. If you click on this little ellipse, it'll give you the brim line amount. It does 15 lines of brim. You can increase that or decrease that depending on what kind of problems you might be having. Mine 15 works great for me. I've been using that. This is your support type. I don't know, I probably went over that in the other video, but I'll kind of touch on it here. You can have it where only things that are overhangs that may need to have support material built up from the build plate you can choose, or you can have everywhere, and it's anything, even if it's like, a hole or something that's in the model that actually doesn't overhang over onto the build plate, it'll build support in there too. And you can click the ellipse and it'll bring out the support settings. You can do structures, or you can do a lines, or you can do a grid structure. What I've noticed is when you have things that are fairly tall that are overhanging, you might want to do the grid, because the grid's a little stronger and it won't flap. Essentially, whenever the hot end comes over it, sometimes the ones when it's just lines, they'll wiggle, and you can it'll cause problems, and they'll snap off, and then you have all kinds of issues. So I do grid if it's going to be a fairly tall thing that needs to be supported. I've got mine set for any overhangs over 45 degrees. It will build support for. And then the fill amount for the support, 15, because especially if you're doing grid, that's where that really comes into play, is how dense do you want that grid to be, is basically what that's going to tell you. And, distance and z-distance, all that jazz. And these are all options you can play with. For this one, though, like I said, all these radiuses and these angles and everything, they look like they're totally fine. Let's go back to normal view. I think it'll build it just fine. It won't have any trouble overhanging that to meet up. And I've actually already printed this at the moment for me recording this video, and it printed perfectly fine without any support. But in any case, we may print some more complicated stuff in later videos, and I'll show you how support works. So I've got it set for 235 degrees for the ABS. About 75 degrees for my bed temperature. I do have a heated bed. That does help also with the warping. If it touches a cold steel or aluminum plate, especially aluminum will suck the heat right out of that that ABS material as it's printing, and it will just warp it all to pieces. So you even when you have good bed adhesion, you have good glue and stuff, it warps so bad that you really need a heated bed for ABS. It just helps out a lot. And if your printer is anything like mine, you have to let the bed heat up. I mean, it heats up to 75 degrees, but that's because the thermal probe is right on top of the heater. You need that heat to transfer through that aluminum plate that's on the bottom. If you have the same printer as me, I have an aluminum plate that it sits on. That heat has to transfer through the aluminum plate. So it may be 75 degrees at the actual heater, but at the top of the build plate it may be way less, so you want to wait till that builds up. Okay, so you should be able to, at 75 degrees, you probably won't really be able to touch it, but I would wait till you just can keep your finger on the build plate, and that's probably around 50 to 55 degrees Celsius somewhere. That's my calibrated finger measurement. Anyway, I print this at a speed of about 25. That usually works pretty good for me. Under your advanced settings, you can slow down the infill speed. I've seen that happen where if the outside border is printing beautifully at overall speed of 25, but yet the inside is just, you can just tell that you're getting under extrusion. The material, the head is just moving way too fast to where the material really isn't adhering to each other. You can actually, in fact, when you print this, you can actually kind of delaminate it. You can actually peel the layers apart. That's usually due to under extrusion. You're not squeezing out enough material to actually get a good bond, and what's happening is basically it's squirting out the material at a certain rate, but the head is moving so fast that it doesn't have time to build up the material before it moves. So what you can do is to help your prints be fairly quick. In fact, this one's only 2 hours and 24 minutes. That's not very long. You want it to print fairly fast. You can this basically sets the border, this 25. Then this infill, if you set it to 0, just like the little tooltip will tell you, if you set it to 0, it'll retain for the infill whatever the print speed is, so it'll go at 25. And like I said, if you're seeing under extrusion issues and problems that way, you may change this. Instead of 0, put like 20 in there, or maybe even 18. Basically slow it down a little bit from the max overall print speed, and that will actually help that under extrusion problem that you're having, as long as your extruder is doing okay. Now, your extruder may not be extruding properly. Maybe you need to adjust the temperature. Maybe the temperature is not hot enough. You may need to go up a little bit if you're getting under extrusion and you slow down the infill and it's still under extruding. You may need to heat it up a little more. A good way that I check that is I actually just push down, at least on my printer, I push the release that releases the material from the actual extruder gear, and I push it manually. And if you have to really bear down on the material to get it to come out the end of the nozzle, you probably aren't getting it hot enough. You need to get it hot enough to where you have to apply some pressure, but you're not just bearing down on it with all your might to get it to extrude. That's going to have problems, and especially if your extruder is clicking. If it's sitting there clicking, you're definitely not hot enough, or you've got a clog or something's going on. Okay, so you definitely want to check that for under extrusion. And those are the two temperatures to go with. Layer height on this one, I just did 0.2. I didn't need it to be fancy, so I didn't do a 0.1 or anything lower than that. I just did 0.2 millimeter height on that. Density 20 worked beautifully. I don't think you need to get any denser than that. And what that means again is basically the fill pattern. If I reduce the layers here, let's get a better layer. There we go. This kind of honeycomb type situation or lattice work that it builds. If you increase the density, it makes it like if we increase it to 30, it makes it more dense. Like it's just a tighter weave, as you can see. It makes it tighter. So I found that at 20, it works perfectly fine. No problems with strength. It holds the solder roll, and it's like a half a kilogram roll of solder. I mean, it's fairly heavy. So it holds it perfectly fine. It doesn't wobble or twist or do anything weird as I'm reeling the solder off of it. It's not a big deal. So in any case, that's pretty much the solder holder in Cura. Those are pretty much the settings. And like I said, I will export these. You can come down here to Save Profile. And then all you guys have to do is just download the profile, choose Open Profile, and it'll load all of these settings and all this stuff in. So don't worry about that. I'll provide that file for you. All right, guys. Well, that's, I think, all the time I'm going to waste on the software side. It's pretty straightforward. Just leave it right in the middle of the bed, get some good bed adhesion going on, leave these settings, and it should print just fine. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I will be happy to read them and hopefully answer some questions, or at least if I've run into the problem that you might be having, I'll definitely tell you what I did to alleviate it, or if not, maybe the direction to go to try to alleviate it, or what might be the problem. So guys, all right, thank you very much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with the video of this printing. I shot a time lapse with my GoPro. I don't know, it's fairly quick. But I may change my time lapse settings because it's a little jerky, so I may change some settings. So this is the first time I've ever done a time lapse with my GoPro, so bear that in mind. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. As usual, like, subscribe, share. Check me out on Twitter and Instructables. I'll probably be posting this whole process on Instructables after I get all the videos put together and whatnot. So check me out there. All right, guys, take care. Have a good time. Have a good day. Make sure and check out Maker Mondays. Every Monday, I'm going to be trying to upload a video and show you guys just some little tips and tricks, some little things to talk about. Just see how you're doing, see how I'm doing every Monday. So check out Maker Mondays. Let's see. Oh, Zazzle. Check out Zazzle. Zazzle.com/misperry. I've just uploaded a new coffee cup. There's actually a coffee tumbler that's up there that I think is pretty cool. In fact, I ordered one myself, so I'll probably be showing that off in other videos so you guys see what it's like. It's actually pretty well worth the money. It's a pretty cool little trinket to have. I think y'all will enjoy it if you're into electronics. Well, guys, thanks. We'll see you next time, and with that ought to do it. Catch you guys later.